Now, I talked earlier in the programme that we were going to talk about talking about sex education because the guidelines, it seems, are going to be updated. So, in a nutshell, charities are calling for the new Education Secretary, Damien Hines, to establish a fund to support the establishment of kite-marked online information which young people can access alongside what's taught in the classroom. Let's talk to Frank Young, who's head of family policy for the Centre for Social Justice. Frank, good evening to you. What does this mean? I mean, we've not updated the guidelines for, 17, 18 years, and that was before we all were on social media, Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it.
That's right. The last time the government even looked at these guidelines for schools, things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram simply didn't exist. Now, fast forward, and we have a situation where the typical teenager spends almost a day a week online.
Do they really?
Indeed, they do. So we, along with other leading charities and organisations who are interested in this area, are simply calling for the government to take a modern approach to relationships and sex education, following changes in the law last year, and make sure that those guidelines are what we talk to our young people about relationships about goes beyond the classroom. And there is, as you say, a fund set up to ensure we have high-quality information online for our young people.
So what sort of information do you want them to be able to see that they, or what are they seeing currently that perhaps you don't want them to see?
I think at the moment there are risks in an unregulated internet and social media world where we need somehow to get back control of what it is that we are saying to young people. And I think that means that the government's got to do two things. I mean, firstly, it's got to come together with really strong guidelines for relationships, education in particular, which is now the primary element of relationships and sex education, which will be taught from 2019. And then to establish a fund which will bring together the leading charities and organisations in this field to deliver the best possible information online.
And you're talking of kite marking. So that would be information that is. Does that show that's like approved by the government, or the information that you want to draw their attention to?
It means that parents and young people can have some confidence that what they are accessing online is of a high quality. It's a little bit like the NHS website, where we're all now very familiar with going online, looking up conditions and having some degree of confidence that that the information we're getting is of a high quality.
And currently, I mean, sex education, one of the great debates about sex education, Frank, is how early it should start. But if they're reading online, you've got no way of regulating it anyway. Of the age of them, have you?
Well, the law that was passed last year introduces relationships education into primary schools and then relationships and sex education at a secondary level. So the guidance that the government is charged with delivering in the coming weeks will have to make that distinction between relationships information that is age appropriate at a primary school level, and then using the issue of sexual relationships at a secondary level.
So it's relationship in primary school. So give an example of what they might be taught in primary school and they might read online with the kite mark about relationships at primary school age.
I think at a primary school level, you're really dealing with issues around emerging friendships. You're dealing with issues around control. And you can see how that then at a secondary level will lead to issues, perhaps more serious issues around consent. So we're simply asking for information that is taught in our classrooms and in schools that is delivered in an accessible and engaging way that young people will want to interact with online.
And so far, what you've seen is are you content, Frank, with what you've seen so far?
Well, we're hopeful that the government will come forward with modernised relationships and sex education guidance and relationship education guidance in primary schools. But we are simply in a position of waiting and seeing. We are calling for the government to announce this fund to deliver really high quality online information alongside announcing new guidance for teachers and schools.
How much is this fund going to be?
Well, we don't know. We haven't set a figure on it yet. I think the important thing is that the government accepts the principle that it has to do, in this day and age, it has to do online as well as classroom delivery. And then we can have a serious conversation about how much it's realistically going to cost to deliver the best possible information online. I'm
still reeling, Frank, from the fact you say that most children are spending a day a week online. A day a week?
It's astonishing. Well, those are older teenagers. So those are 12 to 15-year-olds.
Right.
Are spending about 21 hours a week online. And indeed, over 80% of those 12 to 15-year-olds have access to a smartphone. So you can see how it's increasingly important that as you're delivering lessons on sex and relationships in schools, that these young people might very well be looking up information on their smartphones as the teacher is speaking. So we've got to do both, side by side.
Yeah, would teachers allow them? It shows that I was on the arc, Frank. I'm afraid. So wouldn't teachers just say, "What are you doing on your phone while you're in class?" Or so they use the phone as part of their teaching, as a teaching aid, do they?
I think any good school will have a strong policy on using mobile phones in the classroom.
Yeah, I'd have thought it was you can't.
It just shows you, though, how prevalent these that smartphones are now in schools and immediate access to information. And that is where young people go for their information, to fact-check things that they might have questions about. And if we're going to deliver a modern relationships and sex education curriculum, as the government says it wants to do, then that surely has to be delivered online as much as it's delivered in the classroom.
It sounds right to me. Thanks for that. That's Frank Young. He's head of family policy for the Centre for Social Justice, talking about how they're going to modernise sex education teaching for young people to take account of the fact that so many of them now look and get most of their information online. So teenagers between sort of 14 and 17 spend 21 hours a week online. Is that right? Is that a figure you recognise about your teenagers? I'd like to know. And I'd like to know also what you think about sex education. Is it right that they modernise and get to grips with the fact that people are reading so much stuff online, so there should be more sex education for teenagers, for primary school teachers, primary school children online? Number to call 0345 6060 973.